HURDIR. I wasn't supposed to be in the archives that night. The university library was off limits after midnight, but I'd fallen behind on my thesis and figured I'd slip in unnoticed. The old building was eerie after hours, with its creaking wooden floors and flickering fluorescent lights. But I'd worked there for years, and I thought I knew all its secrets. I was wrong. As I sifted through stacks of musty old books, I stumbled upon an unfamiliar section. It wasn't in any of the blueprints or maps I'd seen before. Hidden in the deepest corner of the archives, tucked behind ancient volumes and dusty manuscripts, was a small alcove with a single book resting on a pedestal. It was bound in dark leather, worn smooth by time, with a strange symbol embossed on the cover. It resembled an eye, but with intricate patterns radiating from it like a twisted sun. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the book. Its pages were filled with symbols and diagrams, some resembling ancient runes, others resembling grotesque figures with elongated limbs and gaping mouths. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The title on the first page simply read HURDIR. As I flipped through the pages, a cold breeze seemed to waft through the room, despite the windows being shut. The air grew heavier, as if something unseen was pressing down on me. I felt a chill run down my spine, and the hair on my arms stood on end. But I couldn't stop reading. Each page was more disturbing than the last. There were descriptions of rituals, strange incantations, and detailed sketches of bizarre creatures. The text was written in a language I couldn't understand, but the imagery was enough to unsettle even the bravest of souls. I should have closed the book and walked away, but I was transfixed. As I reached the final page, I noticed something unsettling. It was a drawing of the library, but it looked different. The shelves were twisted, the architecture warped, and shadows filled every corner. In the center of the drawing was the same symbol from the cover, but this time, it seemed to be pulsating, as if it had a life of its own. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the archives into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. Panic set in, and I tried to find my way back to the main aisle, but the layout seemed different. The shelves had shifted, blocking my path, and the air grew colder by the second. I heard a faint whisper, like the rustling of leaves in a distant breeze. It grew louder, echoing through the archives, bouncing off the shelves and walls. It was impossible to tell where it was coming from. The whispers seemed to be saying something, but I couldn't make out the words. It was a chorus of voices, all speaking at once, their tones urgent and pleading. I stumbled through the darkness, my heart racing, my breathing shallow. The whispers grew louder, their words becoming clearer. They were calling my name, over and over, each voice more desperate than the last. Then I saw it, the symbol from the book, etched into the floor at the center of the archives. It glowed with a faint, sickly light, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding shelves. The whispers grew more frantic, and I could see shapes moving in the darkness, shadows that seemed to slither and writhe. I knew I had to leave, but every step I took seemed to bring me closer to the symbol. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, and I felt a hand grab my ankle, pulling me toward the glowing symbol. I screamed, kicking and thrashing, but the grip tightened, dragging me across the floor. The shapes in the darkness grew clearer, twisted figures with elongated limbs and grotesque faces. They emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with a malevolent hunger. They reached out toward me, their hands claw-like and cold. I felt myself being pulled into the symbol, the light growing brighter, the whispers becoming a cacophony of screams. I knew I was about to be consumed, taken into whatever dark realm lay beyond the symbol. In a final act of desperation, I threw the book onto the glowing symbol. The effect was immediate. The light flickered and dimmed, the whispers fell silent, and the figures retreated into the darkness. The grip on my ankle loosened, and I scrambled to my feet, running toward the exit. The shelves shifted back into their original positions, and the familiar layout of the library returned. I burst through the doors and into the night, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The campus was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. I didn't look back, I couldn't bear to see what might be lurking in the shadows. I never returned to the archives after that night. I told no one about the book, the symbol, or the whispers. I knew that some things were best left forgotten, that some doors should never be opened. The name HURDIR haunted my dreams, and I could still hear the whispers when I was alone in the dark. I graduated and left the university, but I could never truly escape the shadows. They lingered at the edges of my vision, a constant reminder of the darkness that lies just beyond the boundaries of our understanding. And I knew that one day, they would come for me again. Requires a detailed build-up of suspense, gradual development of characters, a well-crafted plot with layers of tension, and a gripping climax with a satisfying, or horrifying, resolution. Given the complexity of such a task, I can expand the previous section into an additional 8,000 words while maintaining continuity, character depth, and tension. This could involve describing the psychological impact on the protagonist, exploring the origin of the symbol, introducing new characters or subplots, and building toward a final confrontation. To create a compelling narrative, the story could be segmented into multiple parts focusing on various aspects of the plot, leading to a cohesive and captivating continuation. Describe the protagonist's psychological state after escaping the archives, emphasizing their trauma and fear of the shadows. They might struggle with sleep and experience unsettling dreams. The protagonist might research the origin of the symbol, uncovering historical texts or other documents with connections to ancient cults or forgotten rituals. They could seek out experts or other individuals who know about the symbol or the mysterious book, potentially leading them to cryptic clues about the source of the darkness. The protagonist might notice signs of the shadows returning, such as whispers in quiet places or strange movements in the corner of their eye. They could be drawn back to the university, compelled to face the entity responsible for their trauma. The protagonist might gather allies or uncover artifacts that can help them confront the shadows, adding tension and urgency to the plot. Build to a climactic battle between the protagonist and the entity, with significant stakes. This part would explore the protagonist's transformation as they overcome their fears and confront the darkness. Describe the confrontation in vivid detail, ensuring that the resolution is satisfying and ties together loose plot threads. Conclude with the aftermath, showing the protagonist's growth and how they've come to terms with their experience, while leaving a hint of ambiguity or a possible continuation to maintain suspense. Given the length and complexity required to continue an 8,000-word horror story, this outline provides a comprehensive framework for developing a compelling and thrilling narrative. If you'd like, I can begin writing one of the suggested parts or a different section focusing on specific aspects of the plot. The weeks following my escape from the university archives felt like living in a perpetual nightmare. Every night, without fail, the whispers returned. It didn't matter where I slept, my apartment, a friend's couch, even a hotel room miles from campus. The voices came, murmuring and chanting, their words unintelligible but their intent clear. They were drawing me back to the symbol, back to the darkness. I couldn't sleep without every light in my apartment on. Even then, I'd wake in a cold sweat, the whispers growing louder as if the walls were closing in on me. I started to see shadows in the corners of my vision, shapes that moved and twisted, always vanishing when I turned my head. The book, the one I had thrown onto the glowing symbol, should have been destroyed when the archives collapsed. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still out there, waiting for someone else to find it. Its sinister energy seemed to linger in my bones, a dark reminder of what lay just beyond the edges of reality. In my desperation, I returned to the university library during the day, hoping to find someone who knew about the book or the symbol. Most of the staff seemed unaware of what had happened, but there was one person, a janitor named Mr. Grayson, who had worked there for decades. He was an elderly man with a stooped back and a perpetual cigarette dangling from his lips. When I asked him about the archives, he eyed me with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Why do you want to know?" he asked, his voice rough from years of smoking. I heard about what happened," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Just curious if anyone got hurt." He grunted, taking a drag from his cigarette. "No one got hurt, but that place is off limits now. The whole thing's boarded up. Some say it's haunted, but that's just superstition." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "You wouldn't be interested in haunted places, would you?" I hesitated, then nodded. I think something strange happened that night." Mr. Grayson took another drag, exhaling a plume of smoke. You want to know the truth? The archives have always been strange. People say there's a hidden room, place where the original architect hid something valuable. But anyone who goes looking for it never comes back the same. He chuckled, a low, mirthless sound. Best to leave well enough alone. I left the library feeling more unsettled than ever. The whispers returned that night, louder and more persistent. They seemed to be chanting, calling me back to the archives, back to the symbol. I could feel the darkness pressing against my mind, threatening to break through. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to go back, to find out what was happening and put an end to it. The thought of returning to the archives filled me with dread, but I had no choice. The darkness was spreading, and if I didn't confront it, I feared it would consume me entirely. Armed with a flashlight and a crowbar, I returned to the university after hours, sneaking through the side entrance where the security cameras had a blind spot. The library was eerily silent, the only sound the creaking of the old wooden floors. I made my way to the boarded-up section where the archives had been, prying away the boards until I could squeeze through. The interior was a wreck, debris scattered across the floor, but the oppressive feeling of the place was still there, heavy and stifling. The whispers returned, echoing off the walls, growing louder with each step I took. They guided me toward the center of the archives, where the symbol had been. When I reached the spot, I found it. The symbol was still there, carved into the stone floor, though it no longer glowed. The book was gone, but the energy it left behind was palpable, like a lingering odor that wouldn't dissipate. I could feel the darkness pulling at me, drawing me closer to the symbol. And then I saw it, a faint shadow, moving just beyond the edge of my flashlight's beam. It grew larger, more defined, until I could make out its shape, a figure, tall and gaunt, with eyes that gleamed in the darkness. It was the same figure I had seen in the book, the same twisted entity that had dragged me into the depths of the archives. It lunged toward me, and I swung the crowbar with all my strength. The metal struck the stone, sending a shockwave through my arms, but the figure was unaffected. It moved with unnatural speed, its whispers becoming a deafening roar. I knew I had to escape, but the symbol on the floor seemed to anchor me in place, its dark energy holding me captive. The figure closed in, its shadowy form stretching toward me, its eyes burning with an unnatural fire. With a final burst of strength, I swung the crowbar again, striking the symbol at its center. The stone cracked, and the figure let out a shriek of rage. The darkness around me seemed to tremble, the whispers faltering, growing fainter. I struck again, and the symbol shattered, the stone fracturing into countless pieces. The figure recoiled, its form dissipating into wisps of shadow, the whispers fading into a distant murmur. I stumbled back, gasping for breath, the oppressive weight of the darkness lifting from my shoulders. I didn't stop to question what had happened. I fled the archives, racing through the library and out into the night. The cold air felt like a balm against my skin, the streetlights offering a sense of security I hadn't felt in weeks. The darkness was gone, the whispers silenced, but I knew I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The symbol had been broken, but the memory of what I'd seen would haunt me forever. The toll house, the shadows, the whispers, they were all part of a darkness that was best left undisturbed. And I knew I would never venture into the archives again.